you playing?
Hello, and welcome to What the Bleep Are You Playing? A podcast where we play a game, many times bad, and tell you why the bleep we played it. I'm Mutant Menace Sean, this is Stealthy Thomas, and Mason, who only appears in the secret video. But you can't be Spider-Man.
I mean, yeah, that's fair.
How you guys doing
You
today?
couldn't have at least given me and what he does isn't pretty.
Okay, so last week, Mason was going to make a joke, like just saying this game is bad when Sean asked. I'm going to steal that joke, but not in the same way. I'm going to steal it a little bit. This game hard.
This game hard. And what game is that? Well, it is X2 Wolverine's Revenge.
Specifically the GameCube.
We played the
version.
GameCube version, but it also came out on the Xbox, the PlayStation 2. It was ported to Windows and the GBA.
So basically every single console that was available at the time, which
every-
is what every movie tie-in game did at that time.
But the thing is,
sixth generation console?
it wasn't
Yeah.
supposed to be a movie tie-in game.
That's true.
So that's going to be the fun thing about this. So
And you can tell.
Oh, yeah, you can
X2
tell.
Wolverine's Revenge, which was then released as X-Men 2 Wolverine's Revenge in Europe and Australia, but it was originally known as X-Men Wolverine's Revenge during E3 22, or 2002. I said too many on there. 2002. Yeah, this year's X-Men game.
Fuck, Insomniac's Wolverine's already out?
Was developed by a British developer, Gene Pool Software, helped specifically on the PlayStation 2 by Warthog Games, ported over to Windows by LTI Grey Matter, and then a Game Boy Advance which was released with Spider-Man Mysterio's Menace by Vicarious Visions.
Vicarious Visions.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a whole lot about this, but it wasn't initially supposed to be a tie-in because it was announced in E3 2002. Gene Pool Software was doing a game based on the comic book series titled Weapon X. That's what they said they were doing on it. It was going to be an origin story. They were borrowing a little bit because the first X-Men had come out at that point. And then Activision, as it was getting closer, and as they worked on it, decided, we're going to slap that X2 on it. We're going to put Hugh Jackman's face on the front of it, and we're going to tie it in, despite the fact that the game does not tie in at all to the movie. It's more of a comic accurate. And Hugh Jackman's not the voice. This is not Van Helsing. Hugh Jackman is not the voice. The amazing Mark Hamill voiced Logan Wolverine in this.
He's the voice of Wolverine, which honestly was kind of a disappointing thing, I guess. I expected the voice to be a little bit better, knowing that it was Mark Hamill. The thing that kind of brought it down for me is that listening to his voice, I could tell, yeah, that's Mark Hamill. Even if you hadn't have told me before, I could have been like, oh yeah, that's Mark Hamill.
Hot take, this is now my new favorite voice of Wolverine.
Really?
Wow.
Over Steve
really?
Bloom.
I think over Steve Bloom's is fine, and I like Steve Bloom's a lot, but I liked this take because it was a slightly different take on the voice. Wolverine is always really, they've always gone with the deeper. Mark Hamill kept the growliness, but it is the higher pitch of Mark Hamill's voice. Mm-hmm. And I actually kind of liked that for Logan. And maybe it's just the way he interacts with people and the way he talks and things like that. But I really liked. Hot take, this is possibly my favorite Wolverine voice at this point.
That is a hot take.
That is a very hot take.
I don't necessarily agree with you, but he is up there. He's one of my new favorites.
Mm-hmm. I really like this interpretation.
And just because I genuinely, we'll talk about this more later, I genuinely do just really like his performance. He just has a couple really good lines in this game, especially in the cutscenes.
Mm-hmm.
The writing's great.
Yeah, the writing is great. But something you pointed out is that it wasn't meant to be a tie-in with X2. And I think Mason actually pointed something out about that, because when you look on the cover, the X2 is kind of shoved into the corner.
If it wasn't Hugh Jackman's face on the front, you'd have to search with a magnifying glass to see that it's X2. It's tied in with X2.
And outside of Patrick Stewart's voice in the game, that's about the only in the game that is reminiscent. I mean, you can unlock his Wolverine's outfit from the movies and run around in the black suit. So you can do that. Outside of that, those are about the only real tie-ins.
And even then, every X-Men thing was using Patrick Stewart for Charles Xavier at this point. He was in X-Men Legends. He was, I believe, even in X-Men Legends 2, even though that came out after this. He was in Mutant Academy.
I think so. I'm pretty sure he was. If not, they at least had used some of his likeness, at least, or some whoever's playing it was doing a Patrick Stewart impersonation.
Yeah, so...
He was kind of the what was Charles Xavier. So, but without that, this is a comic book adaptation. Like,
Yeah. And I think making it an X, that like slapping on the X2 stuff was what made this game as forgettable to many as it is, because it has that movie tie-in stank on it. You know, like
And,
if
yeah, a lot.
and
Yeah.
imagine you get out of X2. And this came out, and you're like, I want to know more, but I want to do more. I want to play this game. I want to go through this. And you pick this game up, and you're like, this has nothing to do with this.
Well, no, you should obviously play the game first because it came with a free movie ticket.
Yeah, and it was released before the movie. But even like just imagining that, like how that could easily sway one's opinion on it, simply because your expectations were maybe something different. And this game's reception, it's not bad. I mean, we've had much worse. And honestly, a lot of the versions, like the GameCube version, has much higher than the other. Well, at least the PS2 and the PC are the lowest consistently reviewed. The Xbox was about 65 game rankings and 58 on Metacritic. GameCube was 67 on game rankings. Metacritic had 62. And the GBA, once again, the GBA game, somehow, we keep picking games that have good GBA versions, was a 76.67 on game rankings and a 72 on Metacritic. IGN gave the PS2 version the highest of the group, so there is a little bit differentiating, highest of the main consoles, and then obviously the GBA was the highest.
I was going to
ranked.
say, because I think the PS2 was like a 6.8.
PS2 is 7.3.
7.3? Oh, damn.
And then the Game Boy Advance is 7.9.
Oh, damn.
But then you have like Game Zone, which gave the Game Boy Advance an 8, the Xbox a 7.8, but the PS2 version a 5.6.
how much, other than like the Game Boy version, obviously, how much difference is there really between these versions?
I don't know, because obviously we played the Game Boy version, or not the Game Boy, the GameCube version. The PlayStation 2 was developed by a different company, pretty much. Warthog developed the PlayStation 2, while
right. That's right.
Gene Pool Software did primarily the GameCube and the Xbox versions. So, like, I don't know how much of a difference is, but it seems like by the reviews, the PlayStation has a little bit of difference, but also some of them, it simply just might be in like IGN or Game Zone or one of these that is reviewing all different consoles and things like that. They had specific people who were playing the PlayStation ones and the Xbox ones. So sometimes the reviews didn't always line up because you have a different person reviewing it that reviews that different console.
Right.
So that would happen. But with something like this, I'm not exactly sure the differences because we only played the GameCube.
I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I played the PS2 version. I don't remember much of a difference, other than I didn't get past the first level because I was a kid. And
right.
Yeah, I don't remember much of a difference, but maybe there's more differences later on or something.
But why this game gets its reviews? Because this game is hard.
It's very hard.
This game hard,
And
It's
some of it
very hard.
is, I think, design flaw hard. There's things that we've complained about in other games. I really wanted a mini map. God, let me lock onto a target. Let me
Yes.
lock onto a target.
Yes.
There's
this-
limited health. There are literally, like, I went through a lot of them. There are legitimately some of the later levels that you can't get health at all in the entire level. You have the health you have from the beginning to the end, and that's all
I
it
mean,
is.
you can regenerate as Wolverine.
A little bit, yeah, but there's levels where his regeneration is stopped.
That's weird.
Like
Why would
it-
they do that?
Because it's a weird thing with Wolverine games, because in X-Men Origins Wolverine, they also do that for a level. And in that one, you have to rely more on stealth. And it's a weird thing they do where, like, we got to make Wolverine vulnerable, but just for one level. And I'm like, well, why?
Well, the storyline of this game is that Wolverine has a virus in him
Yeah.
that is going to kill him in a certain amount of time.
Right.
I will talk about the game more, but that's one of the things I do like about this game is I think it really accurately portrays Wolverine. Specifically, how God loves kicking this man in the dick.
Yeah.
Like, God hates Wolverine for whatever reason. Like, I think my favorite line is at the beginning where it's like, this virus is going to kill you in 2 days. That's my birthday. ain't that a kick in the head? Like
Yep.
Wolverine just keeps getting punched in the gut while he's down. It's
I
like,
mean,
man,
is there any superhero that God likes? That God smiles favorably on?
Superman, a bit.
Fair enough.
I mean, there are definitely all superheroes have some tragicness in their life that's going to lead them down the path of superhero fighting
Superheroism.
and being a superhero.
Superheroism.
But maybe, I mean, not to say that Superman doesn't have problems or hasn't had it, but he does, get the love of his life consistently.
It does happen.
okay, yeah, that's true.
He has a loving parent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Has one of them at least.
yeah.
Look, look, Superman's.
He's got a
other
good job.
He's got other problems he's dealing with.
Yeah.
Man. He's also the guy who has to stop intergalactic devastation every week. You got to cut him some slack somewhere.
This isn't like Spider-Man where every single issue they're like, how can we make this guy's life worse?
And Wolverine's not quite Spider-Man or Daredevil levels of God just hates this guy, but he's up
Wolverine's up there also because Wolverine has lived for so long as well. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, Spider-Man's had 20 tough years, and Wolverine's like, yep, I've had 140.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I think there was this comic I read when I was really young, and it's a goofy little comic. It's basically Wolverine is chaperoning. It ends rather with Wolverine chaperoning a lot of the teenage X-Men girls around town, and you can see his thought bubble going, if I pop my claws in and out of my skull fast enough, would I regenerate?
So, this game does embody some of the Wolverine getting kicked in the dick feeling. And believe me, I don't think the level of frustration hit me that some of the other games we've played, but there are multiple points where I'm just like, this is unfair. This is legitimately unfair the way they've set this up.
Yeah. And a lot of that comes from, I mean, even the critics back then constantly talked about, like, I saw a couple of reviews where it's like, there are no mid-level checkpoints.
That is a big problem,
you have
too.
to restart an entire level. And some of these levels are really long.
Or if, in my case, if you forget to, at the end of the level, say the option is, do you want to continue without saving? Yes or no. Not do you want to save, it's do you want to continue without saving. So I'm like, yes, thinking it was, they're not reading just quickly, oh yeah, that's save. No, you have to hit no, go to the save and save it. So when I rebooted it up the next day, I was like, but where's my save file?
What happened?
What happened? And so, like, I legitimately, there are things in this game developmentally that make this sometimes a harder experience. I think the best way I can describe this game is it is a Souls type game, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, those sort of things,
Like a FromSoft game.
without the Souls mechanics.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
That's fair.
Some of it, like, because it wants you to trial and error things. It wants you to there's a mission in like I think it's the second level where you are infiltrating the base is like collapsing. You're going into it, and there's a bunch of things, and you have to go around and kill each one slowly without getting seen. But the point of it is I got seen that time. Okay, I can't go that way this time, and I can't go this way. I can't, because the moment you get seen, the level ends, and you start back over at the beginning. And if I could have like checkpoints, or if I could have these sort of things and some of these mechanics, or if I could lock on and know better on some of these things, that level wouldn't have frustrated me as much sometimes.
Yeah, like you brought up minimaps earlier. I didn't get lost, but I think the minimap is more just seeing the enemies' field of vision. Like the first stealth game that comes to me, and probably a lot of other people's minds, Metal Gear Solid, that has the whatever radar in the top left corner, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
And that's very helpful. And a lot of stealth games borrow that. This game doesn't have something like that. You have to mainly rely on Wolverine's senses. So,
and sometimes the senses aren't super clear, or you have to rely on which direction is the character looking, or what little piece of dialogue did he say at the beginning? Was I paying attention? Oh, I wasn't. That meant I needed to go back into this room and touch this box to trigger this scientist coming out of a door. It's a lot of little things that's like, okay, if you just had developed a little bit more, or you'd given an opportunity to either checkpoint saves, a mini map that would allow, because there's so much backtracking in the later
Oh,
levels.
There's a lot.
There's so much backtracking, and so it's like a good system that, like a system that can mark where I've been, where I haven't.
Yeah, Wolverine's got claws. Why not have a little gimmick where like he scratches where he's been or something like that?
There
Like
is
That
marking
would
his
have been a good
territory or
idea.
whatever.
That would have, yeah.
There's one of the Final Fantasy 12 when it came out. The map, you'll see your main things on the map, but all the passageways are blank. You can't see where you go until you've actually entered the room. Then the room lights up and you complete your maps and you fill out all your maps like you're walking through it. Something like that would have been okay as well, that I could hit a button and go and just see my map and see where I am in perspective of all those things. It's not my biggest complaint. My biggest complaint is not having a lock on, but
Like
The
this was,
saga of Lock-On continues.
yeah. This is after. Oh crap! What is it? This is after Ocarina of Time. Locking on has already been a thing. There's no excuse.
there's no excuse on this. I think they were trying to make it for the stealth, like your Metal Gear Solid kind of feeling, but if you're going to have the action adventure elements, and this at its core is even described as a beat 'em up. That's how they described the game.
Which is, I don't think they should have, but
But that's
Yeah, no.
But if that's going to be your main idea, you have to be able to lock onto an enemy. And I also, while the strikes were all very cool, there are different mechanics. You can unlock more, you can figure out more things like that. Getting sometimes them to trigger is really frustrating,
yeah, because there were several times,
especially in certain boss fights.
yeah,
I'm looking at you, Wendigo.
when to go,
Yeah,
when to go. How about when to know?
that
What
They-
the
Good job. Good one. That's
Yes.
good. This is very good.
It's the only one I'm gonna get. But yeah, like there's several times where like you have to press strike to do say a stealth takedown, and in a lot of these levels I will do that, but because I'm not in the right position, the strike popped up for like a split second and then it's gone. So Wolverine just sits there while the guy turns around and then blows his head off, and I'm like, dude.
There's also, in a lot of the stealth, you'll be against a wall, and the guy's on the other side. So it's a corner on the other side, and you got to stealth around, come around, and do it, and you have to be able to hit the strike on it. But in a lot of the levels, if they see you, the level ends.
Right.
So trying to get to that moment, but you have to peek around enough to be able to get the strike to trigger and not get seen. Some of just the mechanics, it feels like it just needed a little more tweaking in a lot of places for a lot of the mechanics.
And I think that kind of goes back to the fact that it was Activision just decided it was going to be a tie-in. Because I feel like if it wasn't, then it would have had time to polish stuff up.
It also, I think,
yeah.
there's an element of the developer.
Yeah.
Gene Pool Software. If you want to look at their game history, it is 3 games. It is X2 Wolverine's Revenge for the Xbox, X2 Wolverine's Revenge for the GameCube, and X2 Wolverine's Revenge for the PlayStation 2. That is their development history.
So you say 3, you really mean 1.
Yep.
Yikes.
So that's their history. And so I think some of that is like, not to say like nobody there was talented or knew what they were doing. It feels like, it can feel like a development studio's first game, especially in those mid 2000s when a lot of development studios were getting their feel on how games were going to become and be modern and move on from 64 and PlayStation into the PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and then even beyond into PS3, Wii, 360, and beyond, things like that, trying to feel how games moved really fast of growth,
Yeah.
And so sometimes a lot of these studios that we've looked at and things like, you can see, okay, I see where they got their footing, or I see why they got to this game. We don't see that with the studio because this is their game. Now,
This is
the other studio that worked specifically, I believe the PS2 is what they get credit for, is Warthog Games.
who we've talked about.
We've
before.
talked about because they're the ones that made Looney Tunes Back in Action.
Oh.
And they also did the masterpiece we discovered in that episode, Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter.
Masterpiece.
And they also are doing a game we are covering soon enough.
Yep. So like we'll have a lot. We don't have a lot more to say on that.
Come back to the war.
And then the GBA game, I said Vicarious Visions. They basically are a studio that moves games over to different systems. They're a
Well,
port.
Vicarious Visions is Vicarious Visions are also the people that made the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy
They
and
did.
the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2
Yep.
remasters.
So they do a
did.
lot of the Insane Trilogy. They've done recently some Call of Duties, and they're working on Diablo 2 Resurrected, or they did Diablo 2 Resurrected. So they make a lot of. They did the Skylanders games, so they did a lot of porting, and then they've done a lot of using existing things and updating existing old things. So they're a good studio.
Yeah, they're solid.
But yeah.
I think at this point they have been kind of absorbed into the Call of Duty machine, like is the fate of anyone who works with Activision.
Yeah. But that you can see why some of maybe the developmental things are like, oh yeah, this is a studio's first game. And even in the case of Warthog, it's one of their later ones. So like, I wonder why the PS2 was worse because
Well, we went over it in the Looney Tunes Back in Action episode. There were like 6 games released that year.
that's true.
And maybe
maybe they were stretched thin.
Yeah, that's why Looney Tunes Back in Action did have a lot of problems, and probably maybe the PS2 version had a lot of issues as well.
And the Vicarious Visions, they did the Spider-Man Mysterio's Menace game.
That's right.
For the
which
GBA
was,
as well.
Which was packed together.
Which they were packaged together, both this and that were
really?
packaged together as games.
Which
Which is cool.
It's also weird because there was I believe a actual Wolverine game, like just a solo Wolverine game around this time that was just based on the comics. So I don't know.
It's also kind of weird that they would bundle in this what they were trying to package as a movie tie-in game with a game that isn't a movie tie-in game.
Yeah, that isn't
Yeah.
even close.
But also it's the GBA.
It's almost like they knew.
And the GBA, I think, came out a little later. I could be wrong. Let me look at the release date on that. Nope, it came out with they are all the same release date. So never mind. It came out the exact same day as all of them.
That's interesting. That doesn't usually happen.
Yeah,
it
it
usually
can
does.
for-
I mean,
It can. It depends on the port and things like that.
Yeah,
on our podcast, it hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened all the
That's
time,
happened
yeah.
for us.
Fun fact: this was Wolverine's first starring role in a video game since Adamantium Rage on the Genesis.
Yeah, there
Wow.
were a lot of X-Men games and a lot of really good X-Men games. Thomas decided to make us play this X-Men game, but
why of all the many X-Men games?
Okay, you want to know why? Because I like Wolverine,
that's fair.
That's fair.
and I didn't
And
want to do.
we didn't
X-Men
have a
Origins.
Genesis to play.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't have a Genesis to play Adamantium Rage, so this is what you fuckers are stuck with. No.
I mean, I remember having a Wolverine phase.
Every child in the early to mid 2000s had a Wolverine phase. You
Yeah.
might not remember it, but you had a Wolverine phase.
And
some people are still stuck in it. Me.
and for this game,
Look, he's finally coming back, and I missed him so much.
if you were in that phase in playing this game, you do feel a lot like Wolverine. So I can get
Yeah.
that game. You get the feel. I like what they're trying to do with the animalistic instinct. You know, you hold the button, and there's a lot of different things to say. It isn't always perfect execution, but I like the idea.
You hit that button and you get Predator vision.
Yeah,
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, like, I feel like, I know this was before the Arkham series, but I think they should have done what the Arkham series did and just make it a toggle. Like, that would have been a lot easier than having to hold it down, rotate the camera, and all of a sudden the bad guy's there. Oh, press strike. You didn't press strike fast enough. He's going to shoot you 36 times with your assault rifle.
The other thing that I will talk about ad nauseum about a lot of these games, lock on. There's a button on the controller that's mapped. It's on the GameCube. It is the Z button to pull your claws in and out.
That's right.
Don't need that button. That could have been a lock on.
Yeah.
That could have been a lock on.
You could have just had the claws all out.
Or
at
at the very least, they don't use the D-pad for anything.
Yeah.
Make the D-pad like down or whatever. He pops his claws out because the claws popping in and out. When you pop them in, that's when Wolverine can heal because of the virus
Yes.
and story. Or whatever.
Okay,
But
that's
at the same time, you could have that's a toggle. So you could have just easily had down, pop the claws in, down, pop the claws out, and Z is your lock on.
Or even because the C stick is kind of the camera, kind of.
Kind of.
Yeah.
One
Should
thing
have called it the K stick for kind of camera.
One thing that's the problem with GameCube games, I love the GameCube, but a lot of studios and a lot of making shooters and different camera things made the C stick the camera button. The C stick doesn't work particularly well as a camera.
Yeah.
That is a theme throughout all of GameCube games. It's why a lot of games later would make either the L and R buttons. So like normally you'd move, but if you hold the L button, then it would be the camera, things like that. I know
Yeah.
there was a couple of games that did that. I think Nintendo was actually, I think
Nintendo
did a couple of games like
but,
that. Because the C-Stick just isn't a great camera.
I think did Star Fox Adventures do
I think
that?
it's well, no, was Star Fox the one that had a static camera?
I can't remember,
No, that's Dino Planet had the Dino Planet had the static camera, I think.
but I thought
that was-
Oh, sorry,
I
is that the one?
was gonna say I think Star Fox Adventures was from Dino Planet.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, then yeah, I think it did have the static camera.
Oh well.
But
Okay,
regardless,
so maybe
Anyways.
maybe it was Assault that had I don't know. Look, we talk about a Star Fox game on there. If I could get one without breaking the fucking bank.
Yeah,
they are
jeez.
expensive. The controls aren't bad.
They function.
They function. I did feel a little bit. I said the same thing kind of when we played Looney Tunes, as well. I feel a little bit too much like I'm on ice at times.
Yeah, it doesn't feel very
The character
precise.
keeps moving
Yeah.
a lot, and I don't need super tight controls. They can be a little more loose, but
Not that loose.
they're a little too loose. So in the first level, you have to use your animalistic instincts to notice mines. But also, you have to move slow enough because you don't sometimes see them till you're right up on them. But he keeps sliding the amount of times I still hit the mines. And I'm like, I'd be like, oh, I hear him. It's over there. Oh, I need to turn. Oh, no, but I'm already on it.
Yeah, it got to the point where when I was playing the game, I legit just walked through took the brunt of the explosion, and then just stood there for like a minute waiting for Wolverine to heal.
That's fair.
All right, let's bring that up. Wolverine's healing factor. Yeah, I'm glad they put it in. It should not take as long as it
It's
does.
too slow.
It's
way too slow.
And that's why, again, like, it's not as
I think-
useful as, like, they could have it.
Yeah, like again, I probably should have picked this one for my Wolverine game, but I want it to be different. Fuck you. X-Men Origins Wolverine. Straight up, you can see Wolverine's skin get like blown off. Like you can see all of his skeleton in that game, and it regenerates in
right.
like a couple minutes.
I remember that.
And even then, your health regenerates far faster than that.
If you're going to make a game that's this hard and this many attacks that you can get from, but not that many enemies. So that's why I think they felt like, oh, we'll make the healing, and we'll make a story mechanic for the healing and all these sort of things. But honestly, if you could just have more enemies and just let it just be auto regeneration. That is
Yeah.
hard, but you're always regenerating.
Yeah, again, very similar to what X-Men Origins Wolverine did. Or at the very least, lean a bit harder onto the stealth. Like that's kind of my thing. I think the game
With a
should
lock
have-
on.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That's kind of my thing. I think the game either should have gone not necessarily full stealth because you want to do the Wolverine stuff where he goes ballistic, but a bit harder than it does. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know. I'm conflicted on it.
This game, I don't think there's been a game that we've played so far that I've wanted to like more than this.
Yeah, that's
Well,
that's
we
really...
will get here to a lot of the praise. I have one more negative thing.
I do have a lot of
because I want to get to
do-
some of the praising stuff, but that's kind of a separate because it's more to the aesthetic, the graphics,
Yeah.
things like that, the designs.
It sucks that my least favorite part of this Wolverine game is the game.
The game.
The game part of the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Boss fights. I just want to talk about it. Thomas cheated to win in Yu Yu Hakusho. I definitely cheated to get through and play a lot of games. There are a lot of cheats, but one of the cool cheats that I liked was unlock every level and just choose between. So I could go and try out a lot of the levels because trying to prepare for the podcast and be like, oh, I want to be able to play it. I did play the final boss. Actually, was the easiest boss in the game. I felt
Which is hilarious.
it was Death Strike, but there's the previous Wendigo.
Yeah.
Who was the boss fight in the second level? Then?
That's Wendigo.
That's one to go,
Oh.
yeah.
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 You're in this cave.
I was gonna say
There's rocks, and you have to try to get him off the edge 3 times, which is the goal is to get behind him and get the strike button to come up. That didn't happen very often for me. And again, you move quickly and things like that, so you skate off the edge and die. It is entertaining to watch Wolverine impaled over and 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 over again, but
yeah. That's another thing. Like I get that it is a T-rated game, but Wolverine gets impaled. Cool. He's Wolverine.
Yeah.
should just be able to be like, that sucks, and walk it off. Like,
Yeah. So
No. You don't see it before the screen fades away. He just gets stuck there, and he can't move. That's why the level ends.
yeah, he's just like, shit.
but even that boss fight bothered me. But even before the boss before it, Sabretooth, I have to throw him into the barrel 3 times. I was like, for the longest time, I'm like, why? I have him down to like a sliver of health, but I couldn't get that last hit on because he regenerated. And I'm like, what do I have to do? Oh, I have to throw him into a barrel 3 times. And it's like, that's
So
just a
tedious.
weird mechanic for boss fights that have nothing to do with necessarily skill.
And Mason talked about last week the lack of guidance in Van Helsing. And that is a bit of a problem with Van Helsing. It is more of a problem here.
It is very much a problem in this game.
There is nothing that
They were like,
tells you.
"You're Wolverine. Have fun." Well, for example, in the final boss, which I didn't have a tremendous problem because I had a walkthrough that was kind of telling like I was all right. What do you go through?
Pretty much strategy guide, baby.
Yeah, basically. And you're fighting Deathstrike. You get her stunned. Then you climb up a ladder, and you have 10 minutes to beat the boss. It's a 10-time fight, and there's 4 control panels that you have to explode. But the only reason you would know that in the game is because Wolverine looks a direction. That's literally like the direction Wolverine looks at some point. But I'm in the middle of a boss fight. If I hadn't read that, I probably would have never been like, why can't I finish her off?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a guide game.
It is very much a guide game.
And it's a game. And I don't need games to hold my hand. But if you're not going to at least give a hint, or at least make the reason you're going to do something for a fight or in a game make sense. I bring up the first level where you have to go through the mines, kill 2 guys, but that doesn't trigger the people walking out. It's going up and literally hitting the X button on a control panel. Not actually activating the control button, but just touching it, a guy comes out.
Yeah.
I wandered around in circles being like, well, what do I do now? Until I happened to round up and hit X on a thing that you don't, because X doesn't come up and it doesn't like show like, oh my gosh, I'm actually touching or doing the control panel. Also climbing things, realizing, the ladder, I have to hit X. There's just some little things that's like designing and controlling that's like,
Yeah.
you didn't need to hold my hand, but you needed to at least make it make sense.
Yeah, I don't need the cinematic experience things where it's I don't need the modern game thing.
right.
And I know that makes me sound like an old crotchety fuck. Like, back in my day, we didn't need our hands held. But, like...
Okay, boomer.
Son of a bitch.
Sorry.
I walked into that.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine, because I walked into that one. But, like, I don't need that where there's straight up, like, every 5 minutes is like, hey, this is how you solve the puzzle. I get it. I can solve the puzzle. I'm not an idiot, but I also don't want, again, this game where Wolverine is just kind of dropped into the middle of everything, and it's like, have fun. What do I do? Die. Like,
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
It's
and
just
it makes a game that is already hard mechanically
harder.
frustratingly hard.
Harder than it has any right to be. And that's one of my biggest problems with this. Again, it's a game I wanted to like so much because, they did the most with what they could visually. It looks fine. It's probably the best looking quote-unquote movie tie-in game we've played, I think. And that's just by
Yes.
default because it's not really a movie tie-in game.
yeah.
But it just gets ruined by being tough as nails.
Yeah, and honestly, kind of a weird thing to bring up, but one of my favorite things about Wolverine is his inventiveness. Like, when you read the comics or when you watch the movies, he doesn't just use his claws. Like, yeah, that's a big part. But occasionally he'll just, like, pick up a gun and use it, or pick up a sword and use it alongside his claws. I kind of wish you could do that in this game. Like, if you've ever played Prototype, yeah, Alex Mercer has all the superpowers in the world, but occasionally you can just pick up an M16 from a soldier and mow him down. I kind of wish you could do that here, like as a last-ditch effort. Like Wolverine is about to die, just
Do the death rising thing where you can use anything as a weapon.
Yeah, exactly.
This is where the way they mapped the controller and the controls frustrated me in a lot of it. Okay, I didn't need a kick button.
No,
I have no
there's-
problem. There are 3 attack buttons, and because strike, but you can only use really strike when it shows up. I know there's a few basic things you can unlock and that, but most of it you're hitting A to slash, you're hitting B to kick, Y to jump, and X to strike. I didn't just have an attack button and a strike button
Exactly.
Yeah, like
because the kick did not add any variation. Man, if you had B to pick up items, or Y to pick up items, B to jump, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
R was to run on all fours, which was cool, and I enjoyed doing it, but was it necessary? Aside from crouching under things?
I was gonna say it's meant to be more of like a crouching stealth button, but also like
Again,
stealth.
you could do that by mapping that to down on the down on the D-pad.
Yeah. It's just a lot of baffle. That's a common theme between all the games that we played. Pretty much, most of the games at least, is just baffling decisions. For
baffling
for
decisions
things.
of why don't more people talk about Flat Out 2, baby.
like
that's a lot
it's
of-
like, why did they map the controller like this? Why did they make it an X2 tie-in game? Why is this game as hard as it is?
Yeah,
But
and
that's a
that-
lot of the negatives on it. The positives on this game are this is one of the coolest looking games at the time.
Yeah,
I love the art style from Wolverine's look and voice, from Beast being just absolutely jacked.
Beast is ripped out of his mind.
But even just the side characters that show up. Rogue is barely in the game, shows up, but my god, her design is amazing. Magneto looks great. Mr. Sinister and even Apocalypse look good. Spider-Man shows up in this game. He's the secret video. He was supposed to be...
Spoiler alert.
Yeah,
it's a deleted scene that they added as a secret video.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
He was supposed to be an actual character because this is slightly developed with the Spider-Man tie-in game in mind.
Yeah.
The first
Oh,
one,
yeah.
So this was
which is a lot more stealth mechanic-y.
straight up in the deleted scene, Wolverine even says like, you take care of the people in the city. I need to go take down Magneto or something.
They were supposed to kind of tie together, which never came to fruition.
Oh, it's kind of like how the X-Men movies and the Raimi Spider-Man movies were supposed to cross over, and that didn't happen.
That had never come together.
Which Spider-Man and Wolverine in particular, and it's possibly because they're the two biggest Marvel characters.
Pretty
There's-
much.
In my opinion, there is no competition.
Yeah.
You can argue nowadays like, oh well, Iron Man or Captain America or Thor, and nowadays that's true, but especially back when these movies were coming out,
Like pre-MCU.
yeah, pre-MCU, no, there were 3 big Marvel characters. There was Spider-Man, there was Wolverine, there was Hulk. Like
Yeah,
those
And
were
Hulk,
the
in a
3.
lot of ways, was just because of the popularity existed because of the old TV show, so there was knowledge in everybody's mind of Hulk.
Yeah. So when talking about like the cartoons and stuff and who all got the toys, it's Spider-Man and Wolverine especially.
And you see that with box office consistently. Spider-Man always outperforms other superheroes, or consistently does. Wolverine, main centric. Everyone knows that. It's the same thing as Batman. Batman's going to outperform other DC superheroes, even if it's not as good of a movie or things like that.
Because it's
Because
Batman.
those characters went beyond the nerd culture. They permeated into all different forms of culture. Whereas, while the MCU has kind of permeated into every other aspect of culture and everybody kind of around, but before the MCU, Iron Man wasn't as much of a name. Like, obviously, comic book and people who read comic books knew of Iron Man, but it wasn't necessarily known just outside of it.
He was a C-lister. Like he's not like he got his own cartoon, but that's about it.
And I
Oh
mean,
yeah, that's right. I forgot
and again,
about
I think
that.
It's not
outside,
good.
I believe Spider-Man and Wolverine, even in the MCU era, were still the only ones that were like top 15 in the comic. Their characters because they were top 15 in the comics, which is fun. I believe the top 5 comic book characters. I remember reading this was a couple years ago, but none of them had movies at this point, which was one of the more interesting.
Wow.
Again, in 2016, the number 1 comic book sales was Squirrel Girl.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
she had been the most popular comic book character out there. I believe it was 2016 or
Wow.
2017 that I read that, things like that. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, like, more often than not, non-movie tie-in or non-characters in movies were more popular in the comics because I think a lot of people that were going and buying it were maybe had watched movies and were like, oh, I want to try other characters. I think I could be off on that, but...
Yeah, because nowadays, if you ask people who's the Trinity of Marvel, because DC has their Trinity, they have Superman, Batman, or Wonder Woman.
Yes.
Right.
Nowadays, if you ask people who's the Trinity of Marvel, you might get a couple different answers, but a lot of people are going to have some variation of, oh, it's Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, or it's...
Because that's kind of how Avengers Endgame did. They were the MCU. Those
Yeah.
were the Trinity of the
yeah,
MCU.
but back then, the Trinity of Marvel, again, Spider-Man, Wolverine, Hulk. Like, if you look at all the merchandise back then, like the Marvel Popsicles, who were the three heroes on there? Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Hulk.
Yep.
Hold on. Just real quick, going back to that Squirrel Girl thing. I haven't been caught up on Phase 4 as you have. Has she even been mentioned?
No, I don't think so.
Oh man.
I know that there's an ongoing joke of among a lot of people that the MCU could have been solved much easier if you just had Squirrel Girl.
Yeah, because
Please.
Squirrel Girl's whole gimmick is she doesn't lose.
Yeah.
Like,
She's
straight
One
up.
Punch Man.
Basically, like, her gimmick is that all...
One squirrel.
Basically, all her gimmicks in the comics are that her fights are off screen, and she always wins with like no explanation. Like, I think straight up, she's beaten Doctor Doom. She's
One
Thanos.
hit Thanos. You know. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
that's part
I
of-
wanted to like cameo at least.
yeah. I was gonna say a cameo. I don't know how you could do a movie. With
It would
that.
probably be the same way cameo like Howard the Duck got a cameo in Guardians, like that
Yeah.
sort of thing. Like, a knowledge exists in the universe, but
Hon-
probably never.
honestly,
shows.
Hey,
that's-
like give her a what if episode.
No,
That'd be
you
fun.
know what? That's what I want. I want my Squirrel Girl Howard the Duck team up. What if episode?
Amazing.
What if the Avengers was started by Squirrel Girl and Howard
Howard
the
the
Duck,
Duck.
and it's like just all the really obscure, weird ass Marvel characters?
Yeah.
Like, that would be better than like any
They
episode of
fight.
season one.
They fight villains like Asbestos Lady,
Yeah, Stilt Man,
Flat
Slide,
Man.
the Amazing Wall. What the hell?
That is a rabbit trail I didn't expect us to go on, you know, but I'll take it.
It's Marvel. It's fine.
No, it worked.
Where's the Squirrel Girl?
But
game?
I really think,
It'd be too easy.
as
I mean, they
Thomas
have a
said,
One Punch Man game, I guess.
the game, sadly, is the worst part of this game.
Yeah.
because
Because
like,
the story's really interesting, the character models and the characters are really cool designed. The graphics, while they aren't amazing and haven't aged amazingly, they look good. They're perfectly fine. The music's actually pretty good for this game, and the voice acting is outstanding.
yeah, I love the voice acting. Again, we've talked about Mark Hamill, and he's a great job. There are even characters who are barely in the game. Colossus is fantastic
Yeah.
in this game.
There's such a good line of it because he's guarding the prison and he's like, "Oh, I can't let you in here. I can't let you in here." He's like, "Oh, I can't do it there. But if I didn't see you, then
And he literally like turns his
around.
back.
You could go in, and it's great. It's a great moment. Oh, Juggernaut. That's the third one in the prison.
Juggernaut.
There we go.
Oh,
Earlier
yeah.
today, I was like, there are three people that get out of the prison, and it was I couldn't remember who the third one was, and it was Juggernaut.
Magneto, Omega Red, and Juggernaut. That's
Yeah.
right.
Deathstrike is the final. Lady Deathstrike is the final boss.
Which she kind of, to be fair, I didn't watch the whole game, so maybe there's like some in-game dialogue that hints to it. But in terms of cutscenes, she ain't hinted at.
Not a whole lot.
Which X-Men movie is it that has Lady Deathstrike?
X2.
Is it X2? Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess
So
that's why
again-
they titled it.
Well, I think also because she's very much tied to Wolverine's origins.
Yeah.
So both of those, both X2 and this we're trying to talk about origins, not to be confused with X-Men Origins Wolverine, but they're trying to talk about, so that makes sense. That
The
she'd
better
be in it.
game, the much worse movie.
Yikes.
But yeah, I talked about it kind of earlier, but I like that the game does kind of replicate that feeling that Wolverine is just constantly getting his ass whipped by life. Again, the whole game, he is on a ticking clock. He is dying, and he's still like making these kind of sarcastic comments because it's just kind of another day for him. He's dying, yeah. And
Again.
and one of my favorite parts is he gets one part to the cure, because there's two parts to the cure. He gets one part, and then he finds the clipboard with like the the formula for the other part, and because Charles can see through his eyes, so he goes, "Chuck, can you read this, Chuck?" And it's like the science is like, "Oh, is that telepathy? Yeah, that doesn't work here. You have to go outside."
Which that leads to one of my favorite things about it. Maybe there are other media that has done it, but this is the only time I've ever seen Wolverine calling Xavier Chuck, and I love it.
Yeah, why doesn't he do that more often?
He needs to do that more. I absolutely love that he calls him Chuck.
That's such a Wolverine thing.
It is.
I wish they brought that over to the movies.
Yeah, instead of Wheels, like, what do they call you, Chuck? Charlie Brown?
Charlie Brown. I want to see someone make a like a fan art of Charlie Brown, but it's Patrick Stewart with the forehead line.
Oh, I was just thinking Charlie Brown, but he's in the Professor X attire, but it still has the little swirly head.
Something that was in Looney Tunes and then in this game, so not surprising, similar studios. Collectibles. So many collectibles.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
But I actually liked a lot of the collectibles. There's not... you're collecting things like comic books to unlock outfits. All the outfits are pretty cool. I loved running around in the classic yellow spandex. That was fun to run around the levels in.
Which, okay, they're bringing Hugh Jackman back for Deadpool 3. I think he's playing Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
There's a theory that he's just gonna be playing himself. Like, there's a theory.
Wait, how funny would it be if it, the Deadpool comic book character it's his Hydra soldier. Yes, Bob the Hydra soldier. What is that?
Amazing.
I'm pretty sure he's gonna be Wolverine. Like, who knows? Maybe he will be Bob, but just put him in the fucking spandex.
Yep.
Oh, please.
It's already there.
But you also could unlock, you find Cerebro files, which if you didn't go back and look at those, they have the character models and then all the stories. Patrick Stewart narrates all of their backstories, which is really cool. So yeah, and I think you also unlock the movies. You can find stuff from movies as well.
I think so.
But yeah, the collectibles were cool. They're sometimes just, you're like, oh, that's why I had this room here to go grab a file.
I mean,
or
they're completely superfluous.
yeah.
I mean, the main collectibles dog tags. You get those, like, you get popcorn at a movie theater, like you get chocolate at a candy store, and they unlock the strikes. Like, they unlock more strikes.
Yep. Which is cool. I just wish the strike mechanic was just better implemented.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I just wish were better about this game.
But yeah, that's kind of my overarching opinion. I think kind of we're all strangely on the same page here. I think in a lot of ways this game is outside of the game is really fun.
The
problem
is there is a game in this
and
game.
a lot of the game is frustrating.
It's a lot like how you were describing the Van Helsing movie. They were like, oh, we're going back to Wolverine's origins. We've got this great story. We've designed all these new character models that all looks great. Oh, we need a game.
Oh yeah, game. There needs to be game mechanics.
There needs to be game in this game.
Quickly, Metal Gear Solid. That'll work.
But sir, we only have 6 months to do it. Just do it.
Implement Metal Gear Solid.
I like to think this is one of those games that the developers brought it up to the publishers and showed it to them, and they were like, "Oh, this is a really good concept. If you work on this more, this will be a pretty great game." And the developers were like, "Oh, this came out last week. This is already on store shelves."
So they show them the video, and it's like, "Oh, this is looking really good. Thank you. How long you need more to work on it? I don't know, maybe like 6 months. Cool, you got 2 weeks."
I need it by 6 o'clock tonight.
Oh.
Yeah, that's just the unfortunate.
And again, all of us are. I can't think. I did not expect Mason to like this game.
Yeah, we expected Mason to have the rage of Van Helsing, and it's been more of a containedness.
But the thing about Van Helsing is that it was a bad game, and I didn't have fun playing it or looking at it. But this game, I at least had fun looking at.
I think there's maybe the difference in this between the two is that you have played games in this style and know kind of what to expect going into this style.
True.
Yeah.
Van Helsing was a first experience.
Van Helsing was very
that might have just been frustration.
So that
maybe
legitimately
you just straight up don't like Devil May Cry.
Yeah,
that
might be part of it too.
Or it might also be the thing. Maybe you're like me. Maybe you just like Wolverine.
I do really like Wolverine.
And there's so much Wolverine in this Wolverine game.
Look, I get some people think he's overrated. He probably doesn't need to be in as much as he is, but I don't care. I love Wolverine. So, yeah. And again, I think this game, the best thing about this Wolverine game is fittingly enough Wolverine. Mark Hamill does a great job doing his voice. He's got, the writing is really good for him. And yeah, he's...
I mean, the game opens with him growling, "Not an animal."
Yeah.
And it's really, I immediately, I was like, oh, I really like this voice. Like, just from the beginning, I was just like, I really like this voice.
It's a lot more cavemanish.
Yeah,
Which kind of works.
Yeah, I did have to get used to it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, because, I mean, for God's sake, I have had years of just Steve Bloom Wolverine.
Steve
and,
Bloom.
And, of course, Steve Bloom is still my favorite Wolverine because I'm very basic. But if we're talking, like, second favorites, I think Mark Hamill might be up there.
And look, this podcast loves Steve Bloom, so there's no disrespect here on my end from Steve Bloom. We love Steve Bloom very much.
Please come on the show.
He's in all of our games, it seems like.
No, what we need to do is, all right, yeah, top 5 Steve Bloom roles. Number 5, Heat Blast from Ben 10. Number 4, Raven from Beatdown Fists of Vengeance.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's where the Steve Bloom joke started.
Yeah,
All,
that's the
all
one
comes
good thing
back.
to come from that episode.
It always comes back, as it does, to Steve Bloom.
So on this podcast, we like to ask 2 major questions about every game we play. The first one being, how does this game hold up?
I mean, again, in everything in this game except for the game, and also I would argue the X2, having X2 plastered all over it doesn't help.
Yeah.
I don't think, but it's for what they had to work with. I think it holds up fine.
Yeah. I think its problems would have been problems still back then. Like, I don't think any of the aging made the problems necessarily worse.
Yeah,
they definitely didn't make them better, but I don't think they made them worse.
Yeah.
I think it's just a flawed control system for the time. So especially in a more modern setting, the flaws are just there.
And again, I brought up earlier, even in IGN's reviews, they bring up, like, why are there no checkpoints? Like, what is with the lack of checkpoints? What is with the unnecessarily bad difficulty spikes? Would you say difficulty spikes? But if it starts up already at Mount Everest, is it really a spike at that point?
It's more like a difficulty plateau.
When they're saying difficulty spikes, they're literally meaning the spikes that you're being thrown on.
That you're getting thrown on. Yeah, that's a very good point.
But and again, I said this closer to the beginning. I think plastering it with making it an X2 game, plastering X2 all over the cover and all over the box, gave it more of that stench of movie tie-in game.
Yeah. And even on that, the further you get away from X2, the longer you get away of it being out, I think that actually hurts the going into it, because at the time you maybe would have seen commercials, or at least you have an idea, potentially there's more. But further you get away and you're like, I love X2. I've been I'm back on an X-Men kick. It's been 15, 20 years. What's this? That maybe does help hinder some of the holding up, because it is because the way it is presented is it's going to be an X2 tie-in game, and it's not an X2 tie-in game.
Not.
Something that I was thinking about earlier that I meant to bring up. I don't know why I didn't. Wasn't there another X2 game around this time?
I don't believe there was.
There wasn't.
I don't believe there was.
I don't know why. I don't know why.
No,
go ahead.
The only X-Men tie-in game I can think of other than this, because strangely enough, this has a very similar backstory with kind of X-Men Mutant Academy, because that also isn't technically a tie-in to the first movie, but it's definitely got a lot of elements from it. Like, again, Patrick Stewart as Professor Xavier, the costumes and stuff like that. The only 2 official X-Men movie tie-in games I can think of is X-Men Origins Wolverine, obviously.
Right, yeah.
And X-Men the video game.
Yeah, this is technically the tie-in game for X2.
Okay.
So,
for some reason, I was thinking there was another X2 game that came out around the same time, and I was like, is there really any reason you needed 2? But I guess there isn't. So that's
because it would have been about around this.
Point.
Then Legends 2 would have been coming out. So
that's probably what I was thinking
around then. So and Legends 2, which is very interesting that this game is ending with the whole game you were being monitored by Apocalypse and Mr. Sinister because they want Wolverine for something. We'll never know because there's not another game. But
And I'm wondering if maybe this was meant to be an in-between story for Legends. Because, it is Wolverine's backstory talking about Weapon X and all that. But maybe it was supposed to be an in-between story. Because spoilers, I guess, for a almost 20-year-old game, X-Men Legends 2, the main villain is Apocalypse. So
It's possible. I think, honestly, they probably set out to probably make another game where it was going to maybe tie into the Spider-Man games. There's a lot of... clearly, they had a lot more plans for a franchise in some capacity, and I wonder as they cut Spider-Man and it became more of a tie-in game, that the idea of franchise disappeared, but it was all already kind of story set in, things like that. I wonder if there's an element of that.
that might be why they did delete the scene with Spider-Man.
But that leads in good to our second question that we ask. Would this game deserve a reimagining or a remake in a modern setting?
In any other world, I would say yes, to be honest, because I feel like on its own, if you strip away the X2 stuff, maybe even get someone else to voice Xavier, and you made it its own Wolverine game, maybe. But the thing is, we're not in a perfect world, and the X-Men Origins Wolverine game exists. And that is, to me, the definitive Wolverine game. So why would you need any others?
There's an X-Men Origins Wolverine game coming out, and
Insomniac's Wolverine is coming out.
That's right, Insomniac's Wolverine is also coming out.
So, I have a three-pronged answer for this, legitimately. Like, I sat for a while thinking on this. One, I don't think a remake at all. A reimagining, if Insomniac's Wolverine took elements of this story and these characters and did some things and made Wolverine like this, I would love. That's my thing. I would love on that. But three, I would love a sequel that plays the game, that realizes that this game is a Souls game, implements those mechanics, and gives me a sequel. Yeah, that's what I want. Now, it's a 20-year-old game. I'm not getting a sequel, but that's what I would like. It's my world. I can live in it.
We got to find the place in the multiverse where there's an X3 Wolverine.
Where the developer did make more games afterwards.
X3 Wolverine's Other Revenge.
X3 Wolverine's Electric Boogaloo.
Oh my. But
okay.
The Wolverinering.
So sorry, were you going to say
No,
something?
go ahead, Thomas.
Okay. Insomniac. Take notes. Like
I know you're listening.
We make that joke every single podcast.
Because it's funny, isn't it? Right, viewers? And they're just listening to this like, shut the fuck up! But look.
Insomniac would be laughing.
Oh my god. Okay, you know what? Mason's on a roll tonight. Insomniac. I mean, obviously they're not listening, but in a perfect world, I would really like if Insomniac, not only like Sean said, took characters and the story from this game, because I think this game has a great story. Like, I genuinely love the story of this game. How it ends, how it begins, all the middle stuff. I think, genuinely, if you extend the cutscenes by like an hour, add action scenes there, this would be a great movie. But I really want Insomniac to put in some of these stealth elements, because one of the things I like about Wolverine is, he can be this big rage monster that goes on a rampage and cuts people in twain and all that, and you get that in X-Men Origins Wolverine, and it's really good in X-Men Origins Wolverine, but there is no stealth element. And one of the things that's really cool about Wolverine is whenever he just flips that switch and he becomes basically a 10 times more lethal Batman. Like, he's reaching through floorboards, pulling people down. He's stabbing you through the walls and stuff. And I really want Insomniac to incorporate some of that into their new game. Will it happen? I don't know. I'm not on the Insomniac development team. They have literally shown nothing except the first trailer, which already has it being one of my most anticipated games of all time because I'm a whore. But, like...
They also have... incredible pedigree of making great games, so
that's fair, but also, so whatever they do, I'm sure it's gonna be fine. And again, this is probably dating the podcast a fuck lot, but just
look, like any game, I expect it to be delayed like 16,000 times. So when people are back listening to this podcast in 2025 and it's
finally coming out, look, I genuinely. I think Insomniac should take a bunch of elements from this game. Obviously take elements from X-Men Origins, the combat in that game is great, it's very visceral. The gore effects, obviously, because a Wolverine game's got to be rated M. Like, this game's fine because it was back in the age where...
You weren't going to get a rated M game tied in to a non-R movie.
Yeah. And even then, sometimes your R-rated movie will get a non-M rated game.
Yeah. So... I think that should be the case, Like they need to take elements from this, combine it with X-Men Origins Wolverine, give us the definitive Wolverine game.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I think that is the power that Insomniac can do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that would be interesting.
I know that Thomas and I mentioned this before, and I talked off screen a little bit on this, was that like leading into this question was like, man, this is one of the more interesting times we'll get to have this question because there is a Wolverine game coming in the
out,
future.
Yeah.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. Hopefully it doesn't get canceled.
If it gets canceled, I will straight up cry. Like, I will replace this podcast with just an hour and a half of me sobbing.
You recreate that scene in Origins where he wakes up and he just starts killing all the scientists.
To date ourselves even more, the Game Awards are coming up. I wonder if we get any form of teaser for that or Spider-Man 2.
I imagine if we get anything, it'll be Spider-Man 2 because that's supposed to come out in 2023.
I think that's further in development, but I wonder.
But maybe we'll get both. Like maybe Spider-Man 2 will get like legit gameplay trailer, and maybe Wolverine will get another pre-rendered trailer, but with a release date maybe. That's all I'd want. I just want a release date because like people are like, oh, it might come out late 2023.
And tell us who's voicing Wolverine.
Yes, tell us who's voicing Wolverine.
Yeah, is it
Mark
Steve?
Hamill.
Is it Steve Bloom? Did you really dig deep and bring back Mark Hamill, or
Is Hugh Jackman.
Did you shell out the big bucks and bring in Hugh Jackman?
or is it someone we're not even entirely thinking of?
Is it what's
Kevin Hart.
Is it jeez?
Is it Jaleel White?
Is it the guy who does Solid Snake's voice? Because I think that would
David Hayter?
Yeah, I think David Hayter.
Look,
would
they
do a
just
good
kept
Wolverine.
Yuri Lowenthal there after Spider-Man and just had him do it as well.
Oh yeah, that's. I forgot Yuri Lowenthal was
Yuri
Spider-Man.
Lowenthal is a great voice actor. I don't know if that'd be fantastic.
I don't know if he could do. I don't think he could do Wolverine.
It turns out to be pitch perfect. Oh.
He'd just be doing his Sasuke. That's what he would be
Ah,
doing.
jeez.
Oh, jeez, I really wouldn't like it then. I fucking hate that bastard.
Thomas really just hates the edgy bad boys in
I do, all right? I really fucking hate those edgy pricks because they're always the same fucking character. It's always the same shit. I'm so edgy and all the women like me. Fuck off, you prick. Take a fucking hike.
So that's Thomas angry, and this has been X2, Wolverine's Revenge.
Surprisingly enough, I did not get angry at the game itself. You remember the game Spider-Man Web of Shadows?
Yes. good
Yeah,
game.
yeah. That was the
was
one
the
that came out after Shattered Dimensions, right?
No,
was before
it was
it.
before.
Oh, it was before. Okay.
It was-
Oh, yeah.
It was after Spider-Man 3.
Okay, yeah. I got confused.
You know,
That's my bad.
in that game, there's a bunch of Marvel characters that cameo, including Wolverine. And in that game, you have the mechanic where you swap between red suit Spider-Man and black suit Spider-Man. There was going to be a sequel where you would be swapping between Spider-Man and Wolverine.
I want that
It
game.
was going to be a buddy cop Spider-Man.
I want that
Wolverine
game.
Oh, man.
I want that game so fucking
would
bad.
very much
and
like
we're
that
never
game.
going to get it unless
would-
Insomniac's Spider-Man does really well and Wolverine does really well.
That would be.
I think the
that would,
Please.
that would be really cool because some of the best episodes in my personal favorite Spider-Man cartoon, Ultimate Spider-Man, have Spider-Man and Wolverine teaming up, and they're so funny.
And even
So
in
I would. Oh man.
and even in other Spider-Man shows, not even Spider-Man shows, Avengers shows, there's an episode where Spider-Man and Wolverine are together in Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and it's fucking hilarious because in that episode, sorry to go on a bit of a tangent.
Oh, you're good.
In that episode, time is like colliding and velociraptors come in because of course they do.
As
And-
they're
as one
known
does.
to do.
And
Yeah.
Wolverine has to slaughter the shit out of them while Spider-Man's watching. And it's obviously shadows because it's a kid's show, but he's very brutally slaughtering them while Spider-Man's in the back. Like, hey, you need help. Oh my God.
Spider-Man and Wolverine work
I
very
think he'll
well
take
together.
this one.
They do.
Very well
Spider-Man and
together.
Wolverine work so well together, which is why it makes me it is painful that we have not got a Spider-Man Wolverine video game, despite the fact that this and not Shattered Dimensions, Web of Shadows 2, that makes 2 times
That
where it was gonna
wanted to do
happen.
it. Yep.
So look, Insomniac, again, you're obviously listening. If both of them do good, I don't care if it takes 10 years, just develop that, please.
That would be really good.
So yeah, what did you guys think? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you want to argue with Thomas and his opinions of bad boys in games and media? Well, you can now by sending an email to bleepyouplaying@gmail.com. That is bleepyouplaying @gmail.com. Let us know. Also, on any of the podcasting apps that you're listening to this right now, you can, rate and review on Apple iTunes. I know you can like on Spotify.
Give us a follow.
Yeah, I think you can rate and review on Amazon/Audible. I believe you can.
I totally know about that.
So I think you can do that. So if you have one of those that can rate and review, give us a review. Type some words. Tell us what you're thinking. We'd love to hear from you.
Give us some recommendations again at Sean's email, bleepyouplaying@gmail.com.
bleepyouplaying@gmail.com. We're going to take a week off on the next one, Thanksgiving break, as we continue to date ourselves in this episode. Then we'll be back in a couple of weeks.
To be fair, unless society collapses, Thanksgiving's an every year thing.
That's fair.
By the way, in terms of bad boys, I like Shadow better than Sasuke, so I'm just pissing everyone off. Get good, you slut!